Section 9. The French Revolution. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The French Revolution by Hilaire Belloc. Section 9. Chapter 3 continued. Carnot. Carnot, the predecessor of Napoleon and the organizing soldier of the early revolutionary wars, owed his power to backbone. He had not only a good solidity of brain, but an astonishing power of using it for hours and hours on end. This he owed perhaps to the excellent physical stock of which he came, the eldest of a very large family born to a notable lawyer in Burgundy. It was Carnot's pride to hold a commission in the learned arms which were to transform at that moment the art of war. For as Bonaparte, his successor, was a gunner, so he was a sapper. His practice of exact knowledge and application, and the liberal education which his career demanded, further strengthened the strong character he had inherited. More important still, in his democratic views, he was what none of the older officers had been: convinced and sincere. He had not come within the influence of the very wealthy or the very powerful. He was young, and he knew his own mind, not only in matters of political faith, but in the general domain of philosophy and in the particular one of military science. It has been said of him that he invented the revolutionary method of strategical concentration and tactical massing in the field. There is some truth in this, but the method would not have been possible had he not also invented, in company with Danton, and supported after Danton left power, a universal system of conscription. Carnot understood, as only trained soldiers can, the value of numbers, and he depended with great sagacity upon the national temper. Thus at Wattignies, which was a victory directly due to his genius, though it was novel in him to have massed troops suddenly upon the right after a check on the extreme left of the field, yet the novelty would have been of no effect had he not comprehended that, with his young fellow countrymen as troopers, he could depend upon a charge delivered after 36 hours of vigil. He used not only the national but also the revolutionary temper in war. One of the chief features, for instance, of the revolutionary armies when they began to be successful was the development of lines of skirmishers who pushed out heartily before the main bodies and were the first in the history of modern warfare to learn the use of cover. This development was spontaneous. It was produced within and by each unit, not by any general command. But Carnot recognized it at Hoondschoote and used it ever after. The stoical inflexibility of his temper is the noblest among the many noble characters of his soul. He never admitted the empire, and he suffered exile, seemingly thereby, in the eyes of the vilest and most intelligent of his contemporaries, Fouché, to be a mere fool. He was as hard with himself as with others, wholly military in the framework of his mind, and the chief controller of the terror which he used as it was intended to be used for the military salvation of the Republic. Marat. Marat is easily judged. The complete sincerity of the enthusiast is not difficult to appreciate when his enthusiasm is devoted to a simple human ideal which has been, as it were, fundamental and common to the human race. Equality within the State and the government of the State by its general will. These primal dogmas, on the reversion to which the whole revolution turned, were Marat's creed. Those who would ridicule or condemn him because he held such a creed are manifestly incapable of discussing the matter at all. The ridicule and condemnation under which Marat justly falls do not attach to the patent moral truths he held, but to the manner in which he held them. He did not only hold them isolated from other truths. It is the fault of the fanatic to so hold any truth, but he held them as though no other truths existed. And whenever he found his ideal to be in practice working at a friction or stopped dead, His unnourished and acute enthusiasms at once sought a scapegoat, discovered a responsible agent, and suggested a violent outlet for the delay. He was often right when he denounced a political intriguer. He often would have sacrificed a victim not unjustly condemned. He often discovered an agent partially responsible, and even the violent solutions that he suggested were not always impractical. But it was the prime error of his tortured mind that beyond victims and sudden violent clutches at the success of democracy, there was nothing else he could conceive. He was incapable of allowing for imperfections, for stupidities, for the misapprehension of mind by mind, for the mere action of time, and for all that renders human life infinitely complex and infinitely adjustable. Humor, the reflection of such wisdom, he lacked. Judgment, as the English idiom has it, he lacked still more, if a comparative term may be attached to two such absolute vacuities. It must not be forgotten that so complete an absence of certain necessary qualities in the building up of mind are equivalent to madness. Marat was not sane. His insanity was often generous. The creed to which it was attached was obvious enough, and in the eyes of most of us it is a creed to be accepted. But he worked with it as a madman who is mad on collectivism, let us say, or the rights of property might work in our society, thinking of this one thesis, shrieking it and foaming at the mouth upon it, losing all control when its acceptance was not even opposed but merely delayed. He was valueless for the accomplishment of the ends of the revolution. His doctrine and his adherence to it were so conspicuously simple and sincere that it is no wonder the populace made him, for a few months, a sort of a symbol of their demand. For the rest, his face, like the character, was tortured. He carried with him a disease of the skin that irritated perpetually his wholly unbalanced temper. Some say, but one must always be aware of so-called science in the reading of history, that a mixture of racial types produced in him was a perpetual physical disturbance. His face was certainly distorted and ill-balanced, but physical suggestions of that sort are very untrustworthy. Those who met him in the management of affairs thought him worthless enough. A few who knew him intimately loved him dearly. More who came across him continually were fatigued and irritated by his empty violence. He was among those young revolutionaries, almost an elderly man. He was, this should never be forgotten, a distinguished scholar in his own trade, that of medicine, and he effected less in the Revolution than any man to whom a reputation of equal prominence happened to attach. He must stand responsible for the massacre of September. Robespierre. No character in the Revolution needs for its comprehension a wider reading and a greater knowledge of the national character than Robespierre's. Upon no character does the comprehension of the period more depend, and none, for reasons I will give in a moment, has been more misunderstood, not only in the popular legend, but in the weighed decisions of competent historians. So true is this that even time, which in company with scholarship usually redresses such errors, has not yet permitted modern authors to give a true picture of the man. The reason of so conspicuous a failure in the domain of history is this: that side by side with the real Robespierre there existed in the minds of all his contemporaries, save those who actually came across him in the functions of government, a legendary Robespierre, a Robespierre popularly imagined, and that this imaginary Robespierre, while it or he has proved odious to posterity, seemed while he lived a fascinating portrait to the man himself, and therefore he accepted it. For Robespierre, though just, lacked humility. The problem is an exceedingly subtle as well as an exceedingly difficult one. The historian, as he reads his authorities, has perpetually to distinguish between what is strong and what is weak evidence, and to recall himself, as he reads, to reality by a recollection of what Robespierre